Alright, so here's our next video, the quadratic formula. The learner will utilize the quadratic formula to determine solutions to an equation. So there's your objective for today. Oh, I feel like I should have a secret word in there so I can add points on a test or something, but I just don't know. I'll think about it. We'll see. Anyways, let's see the next little slide here. So what is the quadratic formula? The quadratic formula is when ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 and a is not equal to 0, then negative b plus or minus b squared. The solution for x is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all of that over 2a. Alright, so what does all that mean? That means this. I mean, the first few examples are going to be kind of like when a is equal to 1, but you're going to see how like completing the square has its moments when it's easier, and then this has its moments when it's easier. So let's look at an example. Oh, before I forgot, I almost did forget. If you want to know how the quadratic formula came about, here's your general case. It's all of this. Yeah, I don't feel like doing that, so there you go. You can see the work on the other side by completing the square, and how completing the square helped them get that. So you can see this is actually a variation of completing the square that somebody was able to come up with a very general formula. Alright, so let's start off with a simple, how is this different than the completing the square? Well, the thing is, on this one, we want it equal to 0. So we want everything together. So this 11 that's over here on the other side from the x squared minus 10x, it's like, guys, can I please join you? And of course, the x's are kind of say, you know, we all believe in being equal. We all should be together. Can't we all just get along? So let's get along and move the 11 over to the other side. Now, oopsie, gone the other way. So now it's going to be x squared minus 10x minus 11 equals 0. So I'm moving the 11 over to the other side. So I always want everything on one side. If there's extra stuff, then add or subtract. You know, you got to combine like terms like that. Goodness gracious, even when I'm trying to make sure I don't get disturbed, I get disturbed. Anyways. Alright, so here now, what do I do from there? Okay, first off, what you got to do is identify a, b, and c. So the number in front of the x squared is a, which in case there's a 1. Number in front of the b is negative 10, or in front of the x is the b. The number all by itself is the c. Notice how I'm keeping the signs with them. Then, if you go back to the formula, what I do is I have a tendency to write it out without the variable, or the letters. Even though I put the a there. I didn't mean to, and I'll erase that in a second. But you've got b in the first parentheses. So the notice I'll just put the negative 10. I'm just writing them as it is. B in the second parentheses. Negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4 times a and c, and then I got to put 2a down there. So basically that's what I would do. You know, I would take the formula, and everywhere I see a b, an a, or a c, put parentheses, and then fill in the blanks. Now, you could type this in the calculator and you could give me the decimal answer, but that's what I would have asked if you were a freshman. Now I want you to say simplify this. So it's not that hard. Okay, negative becomes positive. I would do all of this maybe in a calculator. So 10 squared is 100. 4 times negative 4 times 1 is negative 4 times a negative 11 would be positive 44. Add those together, you get 144. And then put that over. 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, what's the square root of 144? You can get that. It's 12. Okay, so you got 10 plus or minus 12 divided by 2. And so 10 plus 12 is 22. Divided by 2 is 11. 10 minus 12 is negative 2. Divided by 2 is negative 1. So your two answers that you can get are 11 or negative 1. That happens when you can take the square root. What happens when you can't? Well, why don't we find out? I don't even remember. Actually, I think the next one we can still take the square root. Okay, so you got 1, 8, and 16. Notice how I'm going to put these in. Notice how, again, I've got this all written before I start putting numbers. So I have a tendency to do this, then plug in the numbers. That's usually how I make sure I don't make mistakes. So you got that. Okay, so 8 squared is 64, 4 times 1 times 16 is 64, that gives me 0, the square root of 0 is 0. So really, I'm just saying negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4, plus or minus 0, which is still going to be negative 4 no matter what. So this is actually one of those examples of showing you one root, one answer, that's a double root. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. If I were to graph this, you would see that this touches like at -4, just right where it would touch the graph. Like that, something like that. Alright, so let's look at another one. More examples. Oh, now this is where this would be a lot better than completing the square, because here in completing the square I'd have to divide by 2. So now I'm going to say, okay, A is 2, B is 6, C is -7. I'm going to plug them in. Again, notice how I'm always putting those parentheses. Putting those parentheses, then I start putting in the numbers. 6, 6, 2, -7, 2, and then I'm going to, again, -6, the negative of a positive is -6, plus minus. 6 squared is 36, plus -4 times 2 is -8, -8 times -7 is positive 56. So that gives me, add those two together, 92. Square root of 2, 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so let's simplify 92. 92 is 2 and 46, that's 2 and 23. Whoopsie, went too far there. Let's try that again. There we go. 2 and 23, I hate having stubby fingers. What can I say? Okay, so I got a pair of 2's, and I got a 23 that stays inside. So at this point, this is what I have. Okay, now, if you look at the 3 numbers on the outside, if I want to simplify this the furthest way, all 3 numbers, 6, 2, and 4, are divisible by 2. I don't even worry about the square root one, just the numbers on the outside. So I'm going to divide all of those by 2, and that would give me -3 plus or minus 1 square root of 23 over 2. So when I divide by 2, those are the numbers I end up with. So you always look, see if these 3 numbers, and it has to be all 3 of them together, the 3 numbers on the outside, if they are divisible by the same thing. Anything, whether it be the 4 or a 2 or something else. Okay? Alright, I believe this is my last example. Here we go. A is 1, B is -6, C is 10. Plug this in. You can see me go through this. I'm just going to let it play. You can see how it goes. We're going to slow it down just a wee bit. Okay, so play it out. You end up getting, like, let's see here, +6. Notice there's a negative, so that's +6 plus or minus 36 minus 40 is -4 over 2. And again, every time we see a negative, we put I, but 4 is divisible, or it has a square root, so that's 2I. So I'm going to have 6 plus or minus 2I over 2. I cannot combine the 6 and the 2I. All 3 numbers, though, because there's no more numbers left in the square root, all 3 numbers are divisible by 2, so let's divide them by 2, and that would give me 3 plus or minus I over 1, which is just 3 plus or minus I. Okay, so that is a fairly quick introduction to the quadratic formula. You saw some different examples. Keep in mind that this formula you need, so make sure you have it on a note card or whatever. But that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for your time. There you go. Oh, and I guess I could put a secret word. Secret word, district. Gotta show it to me before class.